say, the Warner Independent experience. That was the very best example of a company, um, trying to sort of force feed these prestige films into the production pipeline and releasing them. Unfortunately, the budgets got a little out of whack. I mean, they were extremely successful in the art house world, but $20–30 million box office when they're have big Hollywood stars, and maybe they're $10–15 million productions, and then they're spending at least that much in P&A and to release them. I mean, it was manna from heaven for the art house theaters. Who, I mean, why wouldn't they be thrilled with movies with big stars and lots of marketing muscle behind them? I mean, it was great. So that model died, and it also was a lot of easy money that was coming into American independent production that maybe has shifted its interests. So those theaters are still out there, the audience is still out there, and it's we definitely recognize that there was a bit of a void in terms of who was going to deliver those films. And
but you kept having this situation occur where you would see something that you saw potential in. It turned out to have potential that other companies didn't see.
Well, there's nothing more fun than that. I mean,
especially the girl with the dragon tattoo and those films.
It was really more, Dragon Tattoo, I'm sure a lot of people saw and passed on for whatever reason, but Tell No One was one that was hanging around for a while. And it was a little bit the case that, as some of our competitors have come forward and said, we did try to buy that film, and the sellers just weren't ready to sell it at that time. I think Europa Corp was perhaps pursuing a
higher.
Well, I think they were pursuing studios with the idea of creating a remake deal, and
they knew they had a good thing. They thought they had a good film.
Yeah. But with Dragon Tattoo, there were other suitors, but a lot of it came about because the book's enormous success hadn't been made manifest yet in the U.S. when this movie was being marketed, when it was being sold. So it's pretty easy to discount a film that is successful in Europe. There's a lot of European box office hits that just aren't suitable for the U.S. market. Oftentimes they're comedies because of the cultural specificities that the comedy rely on. But I honestly can't really account for that. You're going to have to sit those other people down and ask them.
Harvey insists that he had a chance, and he couldn't do it.
I'm reluctant to contradict him, but his chronology seems to be a little off. And I think that has more to do with his ongoing rivalry with, I'm just speculating now, with Scott Rudin, and wanting to suggest that, he was there before Rudin. But no.
But you got it, and then you ran with it. And you really did have to sort of, bury yourself in this. I mean, sometimes when you have a successful film and you have to support it and support it and support it, that can be a challenge as well.
Yeah, it was exhausting for sure. We had a lot of good people. We have a small team, but they were, at battle stations for months and months on end. But honestly, it's sometimes easier to release and to book a film that's successful, that everyone wants. And then the sequels, not the sequels, but the
second and the third.
Second and third of the trilogy were, of course, easy to book because the first one was successful. The hard part is wheedling with exhibitors to get them to play.
Give you the money back too.
Well, that's another story, but so far so good.
But to keep it in screens when the bigger folks.
Well, holding it on screen, but I'm talking about with a new film, totally unknown, that doesn't have a blockbuster book, running advance on it. That's much harder. Is trying to take the film that doesn't have that momentum behind it, and get exhibitors behind it. Exhibitors we love them, but we hate them. They can be a little conservative and a little overly concerned with box office for some reason. But anyway.
So the heroes on the exhibition side, I mean, are you hand in glove with Landmark? Are you, the Boston market? I mean, where are the bastions of support coming from now?
Well, I was actually talking to one of your colleagues about this. He was sort of inquiring about certain exhibitors that really were unique and stood out, and I don't know. Hopefully he will do this article, because there's really they're just not really acknowledged. It's easy to talk about. I think there's too much focus on distributors. It's really a partnership.
Right.
There's some really good exhibitors who are able. Well, they have built their market over decades in many cases.
Almost educating the audience.
And it's about, exactly, educating the audience and creating an audience. I mean, the difference between two completely similar demographic markets sometimes is purely a function of whether an enterprising and resourceful entrepreneur came into that market and said, I'm gonna do an art house. I'm gonna play movies that I like, and oftentimes it's a husband and wife team. Oftentimes it's a not-for-profit that takes over some moribund downtown single screen and turns it into a performing arts space. But there's really a lot of neat success stories all over the country involving really, I wouldn't say visionary, but close to visionary. In some cases, very much visionary if they started something from scratch. But it is a model that can be replicated and has been replicated, and But there's a lot of really creative exhibitors. Alamo Draft House is a great example. But it just was going through a number of these people, guys like Brent Cleaver in Santa Fe, the guys that run the Narrow Expanded Cinema in Norfolk, Virginia, who have been doing this for 20, 30 years. Steve and Dee Dee Lieber up at Upstate Films in Rhinebeck, New York, have now just taken over the Tinker Street in Woodstock. Ken Eisen in Waterville, Maine, who also is a distributor as well, Shadow Releasing.
Wow.
And there's stories like that. I'm neglecting a lot of really good people, but yes, Landmark is the closest thing to a chain, and they've built great theaters, and but their DNA is exactly that. I mean, Steve Galula and Gary Meyer. I think Steve had the lease on the New Art in L.A., and Gary had the lease on the UC, that now defunct and torn down, I think, UC in Berkeley. And
they founded Landmark.
Yeah,
and now Galula's at Fox Searchlight, and Gary's at Telluride and has his own theater.
Sure,
there.
sure.
The Castro, the Balboa.